What was the easiest money you've ever made in your life? Write in the comments what you think about it. Enjoy the show. Story 1. In 2010 to 2011, I used to work for a mystery shopper company in the UK. They would hire 18, 21-year-olds and send them around to local shops to purchase alcohol. The idea being that shops should be utilizing the Challenge 21, now 25 policy, and asking anybody who they think looks under 21 for ID to prove that they're at least 18. I would get a decent fuel allowance, got paid per visit, and got reimbursed for any purchases I made. Budget was like £5, £6 per shop, and you also got to keep whatever you bought. I would straight up tell the shop worker behind the till that they should probably ask me for ID because I didn't want someone losing their job because of what I'd report back. I've also never been the biggest drinker, so I would sell the alcohol to my friends for half price and pocket that money too. Story 2. Buddy of mine's dad was an executive at a commercial moving company and asked us if we wanted to bartend a client tailgate for an NFL game. We were 20. He paid us $300 each. We got $1,000 in tips. He got us box seat tickets. We got to keep all the leftover and unopened alcohol, which was a lot. Story 3. When I was 14, I was asked to babysit for the family I regularly babysat for at 8 a.m. on a Sunday. The mom got me, we walk in, and she gives me a fresh cinnamon roll she baked as the phone rings. She answers. Says, okay, no problem. Hangs up, tells me her doctor was canceled, and drove me home. Said he's $20 for the headache. So got $20 and a fresh cinnamon roll for about 10 minutes worth of my time. Story 4. When I lost my teeth as a kid, birthdays, I found money on the street more than one time. My 10 years older stepbrother once said he'd give me €10 to shut up for 1 hour, and I watched a movie and got the money. He didn't like how talkative I was. Found a gold chain on the street when I was 14. Me and my friend sold it and got €170 for it. We felt my millionaires and spent it all the same day on weed and food. Story 5. I went to work on a Saturday, turned my computer on, ordered Chinese to the office and ate. After that, I slept, and then I left. Easiest money hack. Just go and supervise guerrilla promotions in city centers. Marketing is not medicine. You don't need to save a life. You just need to sit and wait for the results showing up. And sometimes be the mommy daddy on the phone as soon as a promoter has the urge to talk. If the promoters show up, it's easy. If they don't, you're pretty much fucked past the point of no return. That's a whole different story. Story 6. Played a game called the stock market. Worked for a tech company early and never really needed to cash out the stock grants I received. Company went huge and I held on to 95% of my stock grants over the period. I think the term is called new money. Literally in 1 year, I went from desk worker to financially independent. I don't have to work a day ever in my life again and I live very well. Story 7. One night before hosting a party, me and my friends thought it would be fun to shave my head. I have a lot of hair. Seeing opportunity, I drew a cardboard sign outlining the Shave X's Head Fund and set a $100 goal. The idea being that everyone who donated got to buzz me. And that's what happened. I should also mention that this was a Shrek-themed costume party. I ended up raking in $130, which I used in part to get my buddies some McDonald's after. Some of our friends in cities hours away donated just to see it happen. I walked into that house looking like Bob Ross and walked out $100 richer, looking like a Serbian gangster. The moral of the story? You don't need a barber when you can get people to pay you to cut your hair. Story 8. I think it was the late 90s, around 1998 or 1999, and I went to Vegas with a group of friends. We all had a good time, and we were checking out, ready to go home on a Sunday afternoon. Walking out of the casino, I found a $10 chip in my pocket. Everyone was saying, let's go, and I said, let me play my last $10 on roulette. I went to the nearest roulette table, placed the $10 on 12, as that is my lucky number, and it hit $350. That is literally the last time I have ever gambled. Story 9. My previous company's retirement program. They encourage people to put in a percentage of their basic pay, and if it is higher than what the company pays for, they will pay an equal share, or you can just not share any amount, and the company will just keep paying the least amount according to your tenure, and the funds will be invested to some conservative investment thing. I didn't put any share. When they rolled out the program, I was barely 2 years in the company, and the minimum tenure to be eligible later on to get the retirement funds is at least 5 years. I was not happy with the department I was with that time, so I figured I'd be out in a year the latest. But thank heavens, I ended up moving to a better department and stayed for more than 8 years. When I quit, I didn't realize I'd be getting 6 digits worth of funds without putting in anything. My colleagues made more than me because they put in their share, but I didn't, and it literally felt like easiest money in my life. I am in a third world country, so things like retirement fund from private companies are not common. Story 10. In my early 20s, I wound up being an office manager at some tiny construction firm. My job consisted of me watching YouTube videos, playing on Facebook, and ordering supplies online for a small business I was starting. He also bought me a car and paid for my insurance because on occasion I'd have to drive to a site and there wasn't always a work truck available. Story 11. I was a 23-year-old college dropout in Indiana and had just lost my job, was married, had a kid, and was the sole income for us. It was towards the beginning of the month, and I convinced my wife to let me send 75% of the rent money for the next month to a guy in Prague to buy 4 small pieces of a meteorite. Pretty dumb move, right? Nope. I got them in the mail a week or 2 later. Within a week of that happening, I'd sold them and had enough cash to pay the rent for the next 8 months. The fact that I had been able to even acquire those at all put me on the radar of some fairly large collectors. That was my starting point. There were a few highlights. The knowledge that we now have about the changes in the Martian atmosphere over time was obtained from a rock that the Swiss researchers bought from me. At one point, I worked out a trade with the Smithsonian. The trade group that hundreds of meteorite dealers around the world joined to deal with authenticity stuff was started and run out of my living room. A company that worked with NASA on their mission that landed a satellite on an asteroid brought me in for a while. I'll just let you think about the money that changed hands through all that. While I don't do that stuff anymore, I do still have a collection that is extensive enough that I loan pieces to museums. I always make them give me the display labels when they're done with them. Other collectors eat that stuff up. Not too bad for a guy who is a mid-level nurse manager at a retirement home. Story 12. I was sitting with a friend at the top of Dolores Park in SF, just looking at the city and chatting. This lady walked up to us and said they were shooting a promo video for some fitness app and asked if we would mind being in the background. Signed a release form, she gave us each a $100 bill, and we went back to chatting while they filmed behind us. Got paid to do what we were already doing. Story 13. I bought a motorcycle off Craigslist without knowing what the hell I was doing. About the time I realized the bike was in fact 3 different bikes of separate model years thrown together, it was stolen. It was fully insured as a perfectly functioning 2007 R6 with low miles. I paid $4K and got $8K from insurance. I had no idea that I even had theft insurance on my policy. So, I got a nice little upgrade and the thief got some other thieves' sloppy seconds. Story 14. My ex and me bought tickets for mine on the Minecraft convention. I think it was the 2nd or 3rd ever ran in Paris. Closer to the time, we realized we couldn't afford the hotel and travel. Checked eBay and there were no tickets at all, so I wasn't sure they were transferable. Contacted support and yep, they are, just no one was selling. Listed them up for 50% face value on auction, but 2 people really wanted them. Our 280 tickets ended up selling for £1,160, pound 1K dead profit. Ironically, that would have more than funded the entire trip. The guy who bought them was from the US and wanted to take his kid for the kid's birthday. Must be a rich family. Story 15. Bought a flat for $700K SEK, or about $70K USD around 2010. Then mortgage rates went down, which made the banks even more keen to lend money to people. Yes, we can have opinions about it in retrospect. 4 years later, I sold it for 2 million SEK. So for one night, I was a millionaire, but I put the money into another home. That way I didn't have to pay taxes on the profit, and I actually need somewhere to live. And still my home. Don't expect to be a millionaire the day I sell my home now, but it definitely gave me an upgrade just because I was right in time. Story 16. Forgot a Monday was a holiday. Went into work anyways. Triple time for 10 hours. Only one other person there, so I could cherry pick super easy stuff to do all day. I painted little patches of chip belly paint and took a $50 poop. Was good. We'll do again on the 2nd. I couldn't sleep in today on my first day of night shift, had a long lunch, then went in early, did paperwork for 2 hours for an extra $150. Took a $30 poop. Story 17. Got woken up once to a phone call from work asking if I could cover the last 3 hours of a shift. I initially refused it. They offered more incentive like paying for fuel, the full shift, double time. Still refused it. It just kept going. Eventually ended up going after agreeing to a whole bunch of stuff, knowing that the guy I was covering was in the quietest part of the site for that day. Got there and watched half a series of something on my mobile. Let somebody out that needed to get out, which took me all of 20 seconds, and got paid £440 for it. Story 18. During the G8 meeting in Northern Ireland, maybe 15 years ago, the police were preparing for lots of trouble and arrests, so the custody suites were prepared to go over capacity, even holding 2-3 people in cells usually for sole people. There wasn't any trouble, but as part of the preparations, they wanted tradies to be on standby in the police station to carry out immediate repairs should something break as to not have any downtime. I was there for the weekend, sleeping on site, brought my Xbox, some books, an airbed, and set up camp in the comms room. Didn't really want to share a room with 10 other tradies, so I had privacy and AC. Even went and washed the van at one stage. Left a walkie-talkie with the custody staff and let them know to radio, and I'd be down immediately. Everything went smoothly, wasn't needed, but I was paid for 50 hours for being on site, and it was all time and a half, too. Story 19. For a period of time, I worked in construction involving ground foundations and piling. As a subset of this, we would occasionally do spear grouting, shove a rod in the ground, slowly trickle ultrafine cement to harden the soil when there was no work. One job I was tasked on required spear grouting next to a residential area that was lower than the land. We ran into issues of cement soaking through the retaining wall into the backyard. It became my job to watch the wall when leaks happened and tell my coworker to readjust the spear and slow the feed. This job went for 3 weeks. For 18 days, I was paid to watch a wall for 10 hours a day sitting in some random person's backyard. I was paid $3.5 thousand a week after tax to do this. There was 2 more leaks in that 3-week period. I spent most of my days reading, watching stuff on my phone, and writing short stories. Story 20. I bought a house from a bank auction. Previous owner was a criminal and he had just died in prison. I paid €46K for a 230 square meters house with garage and 2,000 square meters of hour-grown yard around it. Now, bank must have never checked the house, and it was a blind auction, because inside I found 3 luxury watches, some gold coins, gold-gilded swords, Napoleonic cannon, huge collection of high-quality tools, a spedboat, Triumph motorcycle, and an old BMW 750IL. After I sold all of that trout next 2 or so months, I made 3 times what I paid for the house without even flipping a house. It is now a rental property. Story 21. I got a letter from a company that searches for money in trusts that hasn't been paid out. I'd been the trustee for my grandfather, who was by then long dead, and was contacted at one point. They told me that they had found some money that had not been distributed. I let them go to work to collect it, and after their fee, I got a nice check for over $20K and didn't have to do anything except gather together some documents I had on hand to prove my identity. Story 22. Was at a whiskey distillery and picked up 2 bottles of a distillery-only release, as I thought the bottles looked cool. Didn't realize it had just been released a few weeks prior and would be sold out pretty quickly. Googled the name of the bottles a few months later, as I was about to open one and wanted to know the tasting notes, and realized they were selling for about $900 each on the whiskey auctions. I paid $180. Literally sent them to the auction house, and about 3 weeks later they transferred me $1,700 after the sale was complete. Literally, the easiest $1,400 I have ever made. Story 23. It wasn't a lot, but it was easy, yes. During my study days, a friend of mine who had an advertising company randomly asked if I was interested to write one-liners and catchphrases for their projects. I never took the offer, but once I gave him a liner during a quick rush between class and exam hall, just a reply to his message, and never thought about it. The next week I saw him, he gave me $300 for that brain fart. They ended up not using the idea for that client, but it was used for another client. I wished he had other offers as well, but it wasn't a reoccurring thing. Story 24. One day when I was bartending in Alaska, end of the commercial fishing season, when the fishermen all had their fat checks and wanted to look like hotshots at the bars, I got on shift, and the day bartender told me these 2 guys were cut off. They asked me for a shot. I said no. They kept pushing, and one of them said, "It's my birthday. I'll give you all the money in my wallet if you pour me a shot. Everyone uses cash in this town." I poured him a shot. He put $400 on the bar top, and then I kicked him out. Easiest $400 I've ever made. Story 25. This is going to get lost in the comments, but I'm an airline pilot and I picked up a 7-hour OT trip. Those 7 hours were worth $1,000 at premium pay. They ended up reassigning me to a 2.5-hour trip. Per our contract, I got to keep the higher of the 2. So I ended up making $1,000 for 2.5 hours of work. God, I love having a union and a contract. Story 26. Doing nightclub/bar security at an artsy bar in Iceland. The people there were basically always stoned and super chill, never had anything other than a tiny dust-up because someone spilled another someone's beer, which was fixed by giving him a new beer. Paid in cash after the shift. Shit pay though. But it was during my baker's apprenticeship, and that cash really helped me along. What made this the easiest money I've ever made was that fact that I took the job with a childhood friend of mine, so we'd basically just stand outside or just on the inside of the entrance if it was too cold, and chat away like we had been doing since kindergarten. Story 27. If you are type 1 diabetic in Canada, apply for the disability tax credit. The form is long, but the diabetes section is super short, and type 1s are automatically approved. Just need a doctor to fill out a portion for you. I've had diabetes for 30 years and just found out about this. They will go back up to 10 years also and give you a lump sum. Not only that, but you will get a check every year for the rest of your life. I received $20K, so $2,000 for every year for 10 years. I literally had no idea the amount I was going to get back and was absolutely blown away by the amount that just showed up in my account. I can't stress enough how good it felt to get something back for being diabetic. Story 28. When eBay was new, I'd go to half-price books and buy teen magazines that had all the boy bands that were hugely popular, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, etc. I also had an eye for what would sell, so I'd see stuff at thrift stores or garage sales and resell. Paid for 2 out-of-state vacations that way. I'm also a writer, so I could make the item more appealing. Bop Magazine Chalk, full of gorgeous, sexy color 8x10s of your favorite band. Who's your favorite? Joey, Nick, or blah blah? Versus others who just had Bop Magazine Good Condition. Today you can't do that because these companies and foreign sales have changed eBay so much. Half-price books have raised prices. It sucks. Plus, there are so many online sites now that are akin to eBay. Story 29. A billionaire rented out multiple movie studio stages for his huge birthday party. Was really fancy with crazy expensive catered food and bar. They had a $250,000 whole tuna flown in with a sushi chef from Japan to serve freshly sliced sushi. Eric Clapton played a surprise 45-minute show. The whole thing was so cool. I was hired as a fire guard. Basically, I had to walk around the party and keep an eye out for a fire starting. I got to eat and drink as much as I wanted and got paid like $400 cash to walk around the party for 5 hours. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.